everyone, welcome back to part 2 of our syllabus overview for EDU 5105. In this video, we're just going to be talking about our assignments and the rubrics. So for all of our assignments this semester, I've tried to make them more practical and easily applicable to your work interests and or context. And I've also tried to give you a lot of freedom in what you can explore in the class, and hopefully they'll be fun. And I've kept them fairly open-ended because I wanted to make sure our assignments would be relevant regardless of your profession and work setting, whether you teach pre-licensure or post-licensure / postgrad or continuing professional development, or whether you're new to teaching or you've been teaching for 20 years, whether it's your first semester in the program or this is your last and you're graduating. So now I'm going to provide you with a brief overview of the assignments. If you have any questions or things you'd like me to elaborate on further, please do submit your questions and I can address them either asynchronously on Brightspace or I can do another video. So there are 4 categories of assignments in our course. There's introductions, commentary article, multiliteracy or MLC work, and then your final culminating project. So the introductions assignments consists of 2 things: completing the Getting to Know You survey and introducing yourself on Brightspace. Both of these are worth 1%, and all you have to do is complete these and then you get 1% for each. These are due on September 10th, and you won't see them immediately reflected in your gradebook since I'll have to enter them manually, but I will go through and update this regularly. And if you happen to join the class a little late, not to worry, I will extend the deadline for you. And I use this information to create your MLC teams, which is what we're going to be using for group discussions in the class. Next up is our commentary article, which is worth 15% of your mark. For this assignment, you're going to be writing a commentary article on Stein's 1967 The Doctor-Nurse Game. Commentaries are short articles that seek to offer critical or alternative perspectives and advance a given research field. They may also speculate on future directions, contain some original data, or state a personal professional opinion. And I encourage you to have fun with this assignment and get creative. There are a number of different directions you could take this assignment in, which I outline in the syllabus on page 9. For example, you could write a critical challenge to one or more aspects of the Doctor-Nurse Game, arguing for a position other than the one that was taken by the author. You could even comment on the applicability of the issues raised in the article to other settings, cultures, professions, or modern interprofessional practice and education. Your commentary should be about 1,000 to 2,000 words, which is about 5 to 6 pages double-spaced, and this is due on October 15th. I say at midnight, but realistically, as long as they come in sometime that night / early the next morning, I consider it on time. Realistically, I won't be looking at them until the next morning anyways. Assignment deadlines aren't like the countdown to midnight on New Year's Eve for me. The main assignment components I'm looking for include an introduction that introduces the article and the issue or argument that you are going to be exploring in your commentary. And with this assignment, you can assume that the reader has read the article. Main body paragraphs that critically discuss your argument and or perspective, with references made to scholarly literature to substantiate points as appropriate. So your commentary article should include about 3 to 4 references. And then a conclusion where you provide a short conclusion to your commentary. So the big thing I'm looking for here is the central issue, the argument, or the perspectives that you propose at the beginning, and your ability to logically carry this idea throughout your paper. Our rubric for this assignment is Appendix A in the syllabus on page 26, and you'll see that I've included these 3 components in the rubric, with the body paragraphs being worth the most marks. I'm also looking at the style and voice, for example, using your own words rather than relying too much on direct quotes and maintaining a professional, respectful tone. I'm also looking at your use of supporting literature, so bringing in literature to support your claims as appropriate. And you can also talk about your own experiences in this paper too, just make sure you're delineating between scholarly literature and what's your experience. And some marks are also being awarded for use of APA and writing conventions like spelling and grammar. And you can use first person, example, I, me, myself, etc. For this assignment and any other assignments in my course, and this is generally allowed in the Faculty of Education. The next category of assignments is the Multiliteracy Circles, or MLC work, which is worth a total of 43% of your final mark. The MLC groups or teams are small virtual multiliteracy circles that you'll be discussing our readings in. In our class, this will consist of assigned groups of 4, maximum 5 students who gather repeatedly over time, whether synchronously or asynchronously, to collaboratively discuss and critique the assigned readings for each module over that 2-week period. Our MLC groups will have 4 roles, which will be rotating through each module. So there's a director, facilitator, summarizer, and the commentator. And I go into more detail about these different roles and the actual process in our MLC guide, which is available for you on Brightspace. I also have another video where I go far more in depth into the MLC process, as well as sharing some tips. So I don't want to repeat myself too much here. So instead, I'm just going to talk about where the actual marks are coming from and address some of the common questions I receive about that. So the MLC work itself has 3 assignments associated with it. There's the MLC portfolio, worth 35%, co-creating an assessment tool, worth 3%, and then the self and peer evaluation, worth 5%. The MLC portfolio is worth 35% of your mark, and the MLC portfolio is a Google Doc where you will be documenting and reflecting upon your learning within your MLC group work. And this is a space that I'm going to be setting up, and a link to your personal MLC portfolio will be emailed to you. And I'll be doing this in the next week or so once I organize your MLC teams. The portfolio provides you with several prompts to reflect on the group process and your own learning, as well as applying concepts to your future practice. And I'll talk more in depth about this in my MLC video. You'll be submitting this by December 6th, so you'll have some time to finalize it after finishing the MLC work. And this assignment is something you'll be adding to throughout the entire semester. And in the past, I found that some students are actually done the portfolio before they fully wrap up Module 5, and they're able to submit early. And I'll be assessing this using a holistic rubric, which is available in our syllabus in Appendix B. And I'm looking at your portfolio overall. So say if your first MLC module is a bit rough, don't sweat it. I'm going to be looking at how you've grown over the semester as highlighted and demonstrated in your portfolio. So your team will be co-creating a self and peer evaluation tool to evaluate the contributions to the MLC teamwork in your team. And this is meant to evaluate how meaningfully team members participated, as well as their intellectual contributions to your learning. The criteria will be based on behaviors that your MLC team has deemed to be important to a successful collaborative learning experience. And I had thought about using just the same assessment tool for all of the groups, but I found in the past with each of these MLC teams, they tend to have a very distinct culture with their own values and norms. So I thought this would be a little bit more appropriate. So we'll get the ball rolling on this once you're sorted into your MLC teams. And a lot of times for groups, this starts with establishing some group norms and expectations for your team. And I will be uploading an example of an assessment tool to Brightspace for you. And you're more than welcome to start with that as your starting place for your tool and then just make some tweaks. Or you could do something completely different based on the values of your team. Your assessment tool needs to include some type of mark for each person. For example, it could be a score out of 5 or a score out of 10. And then some prompts for written feedback. And we're aiming to have this completed by November 5th. Only one person in the group needs to submit this tool, which they can email to me. And we'll go back and forth with your group until everyone's happy with the tool. And once that happens, we'll finalize the tool, and everyone in your group will be awarded 3% for participating in the process. And even though this is due in November, your team is more than welcome to submit this early. Realistically, you could have this done in September and have another 3% of your mark accounted for. And part 3 is the self and peer evaluation, worth 5%. And for this assignment, you'll just be using the evaluation tool that your group co-created in part 2. So your mark will be the average across all of your evaluations, which includes your self-assessment. Usually these are very fair, and I find that the self and peer evaluation scores tend to be pretty similar. On the off case that someone decides to take someone else's grade or is unduly harsh on their peers or themselves, I will make a judgment call there. But I do find that people are generally pretty fair with this, since they're all quite invested in the process because they co-created the assessment tool. Usually when this happens, it's a matter of someone just being too harsh on themselves in the self-evaluation. I will also write up a brief narrative statement for each person based on the comments that were provided by their group. And this way the feedback makes its way back to everyone while also remaining anonymous. And this will be due on November 24th. And the final assignment category is your final culminating assignment, which is worth 40% of your final mark. So for this assignment, you're going to have the opportunity to individually explore a contemporary or emerging interprofessional/interdisciplinary issue of your choosing from within your field. You will create a product that explores the issue, including its historical and theoretical underpinnings, related current scholarly and professional literature, and implications for teaching, learning, and/or professional practice in your educational or professional context. For example, that could be pre-licensure education, postgraduate continuing education, surgery, etc. So you may want to select a topic here that's relevant to your workplace. Now, what do I mean by product? Well, rather than having you write a traditional paper, this assignment allows you to explore and showcase your learning through an alternative format, which you'll share with the class during our conference week. And the exact product, including the topic and methods of communication, are up to you to decide. I've included some example ideas in our syllabus, and I'll share a couple of exemplars on our Brightspace classroom. In the past, I found that websites and video presentations tend to be the most common modalities. That being said, if you want to write a traditional paper, you are more than welcome to. So part 1 of this assignment is a proposal, which is worth 10%. And in your proposal, you're going to tell me a little bit about what you're thinking of doing for your final project. For example, you're going to tell me the topic, so what topic or issue you want to focus on. For example, maybe you want to look at interprofessional simulation in obstetrics or improving teamwork in operating rooms. Question or argument. So what question about interprofessional or interdisciplinary education, collaboration, or teamwork are you hoping to answer in your project? Or alternatively, what stance do you want to argue on the issue? Targeted audience. So who is the intended audience for your project? In other words, who's going to be interpreting and using your product? For many of us, it will just be fellow EDU 5105 learners. However, you may choose to create something targeting a different audience. For example, nurse educators, faculty, staff at a dental clinic, members of a surgical team, pre-licensure health profession students, etc. You can also just create a product that's for your own personal use. Then there's the mode and mechanism of communication. So how are you going to present your issue? Example, a website, infographic, video, PowerPoint, short report. And what's your rationale for selecting this modality? Learning objectives. So there should be some explanation of how the product is going to demonstrate the intended learning outcomes of EDU 5105. And then sources. So share at least 3 credible scholarly and professional sources that you anticipate will inform your work. Your proposal should be around 500 words and it's due October 1st. Now, once you submit your proposal, that doesn't mean your project is set in stone, and you can still make changes, so please don't stress about this assignment. But I do find it's helpful to start thinking about your final project early on in this course, plus then you can get some feedback from me while you're still in the planning stage. So think of this as more of an opportunity to have an asynchronous conversation with me about what you want to do your project on. Our rubric for this assignment is Appendix C of our syllabus, and it's a checklist. So you can be undecided on some elements of your project and still get 100% on this. It's really a matter of how well you communicate your thinking to me and making sure you're discussing the assignment components that are on the checklist. And then part 2 is the final culminating project, which is worth 30% of your mark. You will be also giving and receiving some peer feedback on projects, and then sharing your final revised version with the rest of the class in your EDU 5105 class conference. So you're asked to share a draft of your final project, whatever state it is in, with your MLC group for feedback by midnight on November 22nd. And over the course of the week, your main responsibility will just be providing each other with feedback and revising your own project. Please do try to have feedback shared with one another before midnight on Friday, November 24th, just to make sure everyone has time to make some final tweaks to their project before they post them to the Brightspace discussion boards on Monday, November 27th. So the components of this project are first the description or introduction. So describe the interprofessional issue you're exploring. So what questions are you answering or what stance are you arguing? The historical origins. So what are the historical origins or background of this issue or the underlying concepts? Related theories or discourses. Which theories or discourses are most relevant to your issue and what connections exist between your issue and theory? Literature review. What does the current scholarly or professional literature say about this issue? And you may also include critiques of the existing literature here. For example, are there gaps in the literature? Are there certain groups that are not represented? Implications. So this is really the so what and next steps piece of your project. What are the implications for teaching and learning or practice in your context? For example, what are some best practices related to the issue? Or what are some specific calls to action for professionals, educators, researchers, policymakers, patients, etc.? And then finally, the conclusion, where you'll provide a short conclusion for your project. And the assessment tool we're using for this is in Appendix D, and I'm using an analytic rubric for this one. So I'll be looking at this assignment criteria in addition to the presentation of your product. So does it look professional, creative? What's the organization like? Scholarly literature. So do you ground your central ideas convincingly in the literature? And language, composition, and APA. So APA, spelling, grammar, using your own words, things like that. And I think we'll end things off here since I'm sure this video is already getting to be way too long. We can continue to discuss these assignments though as the course progresses. So if there's anything you'd like me to specifically cover online or in another video, just let me know. And with that, I will see you all online.